Some of the most important moments in human history didn't begin in meeting rooms, laboratories, or war councils. They began in the dark, in the quiet space behind closed eyes, in dreams so vivid, so haunting, or so precise that they changed everything. A president foresees his own funeral. A young woman wakes from a nightmare and creates a monster that will reshape literature. And a chemist dreams of a serpent biting its own tail, then awakens with the key to modern molecular science. What if the night is more than rest? What if it's a hidden engine of human destiny? Hello, Nightwanderers, and welcome back to the hush between midnight and morning. I'm your host, Yarrow. But after hours, when the moon hangs heavy, the shadows stretch long, and the world finally exhales, my friends call me YLDragons. And on this show, I'll be your guide through the black velvet skies of folklore, dreams, and the unquiet mind. Each episode will wander together through stories that have followed humanity for centuries, myths that flicker like lanterns in the dark, haunted histories that refuse to rest, creatures born from superstition, survival, and the places our ancestors feared to look. But every legend holds a lesson. Every haunting holds a heartbeat. And every dream, even the strange ones, has something to say. So settle in. Dim the lights. Let the night open its old stories, and let your mind breathe in the mystery. Because here in the hours when most of the world is sleeping, we explore what rises in the dark and what it reveals in us. Welcome to Dusk and Dreams. Let's begin. Before we step into the darker myths and the wild dreams of creators, I want to begin with a dream that feels like the night itself was whispering a warning. A dream that came to a man who already carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders, Abraham Lincoln. Three nights before he was killed, Lincoln told his cabinet about a dream so vivid, so chilling, that even he struggled to interpret it. He said he found himself walking through the silent halls of the White House, but the air was wrong, heavy, cold, motionless, as though something unseen was waiting for him. He wandered from room to room until he entered the East Room and saw a coffin draped in funeral cloth. Soldiers stood guard, mourners whispered in the shadows, and the atmosphere felt so real, so sorrowful, that it pressed against his chest like a physical weight. In the dream, Lincoln approached one of the soldiers and asked, "Who is dead?" The soldier answered, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." Lincoln said he woke with a sense of dread he couldn't shake. Now, here's where things deepen. Across cultures, leaders have long been believed to receive dreams of their own death. Norse sagas speak of kings who saw ravens circling their halls in sleep. Celtic chieftains dreamed of rivers turning red before battle. Pharaohs received omens from gods who visited in the night. And in nearly every tradition, from Japan to West Africa, a dream of your own funeral is considered a warning, or a message from the subconscious, trying desperately to surface. Lincoln was a rational man, but he couldn't escape how personal the dream felt, how symbolic, how final. From a scientific perspective, dreams like this are not prophecy. Rather, they're a form of emotional pattern recognition. Research shows that when the mind senses danger the conscious mind is ignoring, the subconscious begins sending messages in symbols: death, funerals, dark rooms, impending endings. Our dream brain speaks in metaphor because it's trying to say what our waking self refuses to hear. Lincoln had been under enormous stress. Threats surrounded him daily. He felt the shifting tension of the political landscape, and his dream may have been his brain's way of rehearsing the unthinkable, a survival simulation crafted in imagery rather than words. The mind prepares us emotionally for events we can't logically process. What strikes me about Lincoln's dream isn't the coincidence, it's the courage. He spoke it aloud. He acknowledged it. He didn't hide the fear that came with it. Some dreams arrive not to predict the future, but to prepare our hearts for the truth. When your subconscious sends you a message wrapped in symbolism, it may be time to listen. Not for prophecy, but for clarity, because sometimes the night knows what the day refuses to admit. Let's leave the White House now, step out of its shadowed corridors, and slip into a different kind of darkness. A storm-drenched night beside Lake Geneva. The year is 1816. The year without a summer. Volcanic ash has dimmed the sun, and the world feels as if it's holding its breath. Inside a shuttered villa, a group of young writers pass the time telling ghost stories, and among them is an 18-year-old woman named Shelley. Later that night, Mary goes to bed, but sleep doesn't soften the world for her. It sharpens it. She dreams of a pale figure, a student of science, bending over a body he stitched together from stolen pieces. In her dream, the creature's chest rises, its eyes open, and Mary wakes with a jolt, heart pounding, hands cold, the image still burning behind her eyelids. That nightmare became Frankenstein, a story that didn't simply change literature. It changed how we think about creation, ambition, humanity, and the monsters we make. Dream-created monsters are older than literature itself. In Jewish folklore, the golem rises from dust and despair. In Greek myth, Talos, a giant bronze automaton, patrols the island of Crete. In Norse tales, the Draugr crawls from its grave with unnatural strength, and in dozens of cultures, beings made from shadow, clay, or stolen life serve as warnings about the cost of playing with the boundaries of creation. Mary Shelley didn't just write a monster. Her dream tapped into an archetype as old as human fear. The fear that we will create something we cannot control. The fear that we will forget what makes us human. The fear that our own brilliance might turn against us. Her nightmare gave that archetype a modern heartbeat. From a psychological perspective, Mary's dream is a perfect example of the creative power of REM sleep. During REM, the brain loosens its grip on logic. It allows connections that are impossible during waking hours, like stitching together death, science, morality, and myth into a single terrifying image. Neuroscientists call this hyperassociative thinking, and it's one of the reasons REM sleep boosts creativity by up to 40%. The brain says, "Let me show you ideas you would never dare consider while awake." Nightmares, especially, serve a function. They help us rehearse danger, process fear, explore the shadow. In Mary Shelley's case, her mind was grappling with questions of life, death, identity, and scientific ambition. The same questions her husband, Percy, and Lord Byron were debating during that stormy summer. Her dream didn't come from nowhere. It came from everywhere. And when she woke, she didn't run from the fear. She wrote it. Here's the truth buried inside Mary's nightmare. Sometimes the dream that unsettles you most is the one carrying your greatest idea. Fear is not the enemy of creativity. It's the ignition. And when something in a dream terrifies you or pulls you in with a strange intensity, it may be the subconscious saying, "This matters. Look here. Create from this." Mary Shelley didn't silence her nightmare. She honored it. And in doing so, she created a story that still echoes through time. Next, let's step away from thunderstorms and haunted hallways and move into a different kind of night. Picture a dim room lit only by firelight. A chemist sits alone in a heavy chair, exhausted, frustrated, his mind tangled with an impossible problem. The man is Auguste Kekulé, and the year is 1865. For months, he had been searching for one answer: the structure of benzene, a mystery that defied every rule of chemistry known at the time. He wrote equations, he drew diagrams, he chased theories through sleepless nights, but nothing fit. Until this one evening, staring into the flames, his mind drifted, not quite awake, not quite asleep. And then, a vision. He saw shapes dancing in the flames, strings of atoms twisting and circling, transforming, until one serpent formed. A snake, glowing, alive, coiling in a perfect ring and biting its own tail. The Ouroboros. Kekulé jolted awake with a revelation. Benzene wasn't a line. It was a ring. In one moment, the dream solved what months of rational effort could not. Chemistry changed that night, because a dream whispered the answer. What Kekulé saw wasn't random. The Ouroboros is one of the oldest symbols humanity has ever drawn. A serpent devouring its own tail. It appears in ancient Egyptian tomb texts, in Norse myth encircling the world as Jormungandr, and Hindu cosmology, symbolizing cyclical time. It also shows up in medieval alchemy, representing transformation, and Gnostic writings as the unity of all things. The circle is a universal symbol for life, death, rebirth, completion, infinity, wholeness, and beginnings hidden inside endings. For Kekulé, the dream wasn't just symbolic, it was structural, literally. The subconscious reached into the collective myth library and said, "Look, this ancient shape is the answer." Sometimes the mind speaks in symbols because symbols carry truths deeper than language. From a neuroscience perspective, Kekulé's experience is a perfect snapshot of hypnagogia, the twilight state between wake and sleep. In hypnagogia, logic loosens its grip, the default mode network becomes active, the brain forms bold, unusual connections. 2, visual imagery intensifies, creativity spikes, and unsolved problems surface and combine in unexpected ways. Some of history's greatest ideas emerged in this state. For example, Paul McCartney's melody for Yesterday, Tesla's rotating machinery visions, Einstein's thought experiments, and Salvador Dali's surreal visuals. Kekulé's mind had been working relentlessly on benzene for months. When he finally relaxed, the subconscious assembled the pieces for him. This is called a eureka moment, and sleep researchers have found that it often emerges not from deep sleep, but from the edges of it, where the borders blur, where the conscious mind lets go, where the symbols speak. There's a message hidden inside Kekulé's dream. Sometimes the answers we seek don't appear through effort, but through surrender. When we stop wrestling the problem, when we let our awareness drift, when we soften into the night, the mind begins to reveal what it already knows. Insight doesn't always come from pushing harder. It often rises from the quiet moment when the waking world fades and the dream world begins to glow. That's where truth tends to wait, on the borderlands. What connects Lincoln's premonition, Mary Shelley's nightmare, and Kekulé's serpent in the fire is something deeper than coincidence. It's the way dreams have shaped not just individual lives, but the entire trajectory of human thought. Long before we had laboratories, before we charted the brain or named its rhythms, cultures across the world believed that dreams were doorways, messages from ancestors, warnings from the gods, visions carried by spirits who understood the future better than we ever could. But in truth, the oracle we were speaking to was our own mind, the hidden one, the ancient one, the part of us that wakes only when the conscious world falls silent. Throughout history, people have entered sleep not simply to rest, but to seek guidance. In ancient Greece, pilgrims traveled to the temples of Asclepius to sleep on sacred stone and dream their cures. Native dreamwalkers used nighttime visions to navigate the spirit realm and find answers to waking problems. Egyptian scribes kept dream journals beside their beds, believing that symbols carried divine insight. And across Asia, monks trained themselves to drift into the quiet landscapes of lucid dreaming to better understand the nature of reality. They all believed that dreams were a companion, a teacher wandering in the dark, helping humans navigate fear, intuition, creativity, and fate. Modern neuroscience has given us new language for these ancient truths. We now know that dreams integrate emotional memory, help us rehearse future challenges, combine ideas in ways waking logic never allows, and reveal connections hidden beneath the surface of conscious thought. The brain at night becomes a storyteller, and every symbol it chooses is purposeful, not literal, but meaningful, not prophetic, but perceptive. When you dream of death, your mind may be preparing you for change. When you dream of monsters, it may be helping you face a shadow you've been avoiding. When you dream of serpents forming circles, it may be organizing chaos into clarity. Dreams are not random static. They are the mind weaving meaning. What's remarkable is how often these nighttime wanderings have transformed the world outside the dreamer's bedroom. Scientific breakthroughs, Works of art, political decisions, mythologies, religious visions, inventions. So many began in the dark, before the dreamer even understood what they were holding. This is the part of the mind that doesn't wait for permission, the part that knows what we're afraid to admit and sees patterns we're too busy to notice, the part that whispers truths in symbols, metaphors, and impossible imagery, because those forms can reach us when waking language cannot. Dreams are the oldest mirror humanity has ever looked into, and each night, the mirror still waits for us to ask the right question. When you go to sleep with intention, your mind listens. When you ask a question before closing your eyes, your subconscious begins to search for an answer. And when you wake with a phrase, an image, a feeling lingering in your chest, that may be the oracle speaking back. Dreams don't predict fate. They reveal direction. They show us what we carry, what we fear, what we want, what we've ignored, and what we're ready to become. And if we listen, they become a compass that has guided leaders, artists, scientists, and visionaries for thousands of years. A compass that still points true in the quiet hours when the world grows dark and the imagination stirs. When I look across these stories, a president who dreamed of his own funeral, a young woman whose nightmare reshaped literature, and a chemist who found a serpent in the fire, I see something that feels strangely universal. A pattern woven through human history, quiet but undeniable. Dreams are not separate from our lives. They're part of the same river. In the daylight, we follow the surface currents, logic, schedules, plans, responsibilities, the things we can measure and explain, the things that make sense. But at night, we sink beneath those currents into deeper waters. This is where the mind stops performing and finally begins speaking. It's where the subconscious picks up the questions we didn't have time to ask, where the unspoken fears rise to the surface and the unclaimed dreams, the ones we haven't dared to chase, start to flicker in symbolic form. We often think of dreams as stories we watch passively, but in truth, they're collaborations. Your mind creates them for you and with you. Lincoln's dream wasn't a prophecy. It was a warning born from intuition and experience. Shelley's nightmare wasn't random horror. It was her imagination stitching together everything she had been absorbing in a single, electrifying image. And Kekulé's vision wasn't mystical luck. It was months of invisible subconscious processing finally breaking the surface. Dreams are the bridge between analysis and imagination, between logic and instinct, between what we consciously want and what we deeply know. And if we listen, really listen, the night becomes a teacher. It teaches us to notice what we've ignored, to confront what we've avoided, to create what we've been too afraid to attempt, to understand the symbols that rise from our own depths and ask us to pay attention. Your mind is not trying to confuse you. It's trying to communicate. Every dream is a message, one that's not always clear or comfortable, but always meaningful. So if a dream has followed you, if a fragment keeps resurfacing, if an image refuses to fade, that might be your subconscious tapping you on the shoulder, asking you to look closer. Maybe there's something you need to grieve, something you need to build, something you need to admit, something you need to remember, or something you need to finally do. The night is not the enemy of clarity. Often, it's the source of it. And when the world falls quiet and you drift between wakefulness and sleep, you may find that the whisper you hear, the one tucked inside a strange dream or a surreal image, is not a warning at all, but an invitation. An invitation to become more than who you were when you closed your eyes. It's been a privilege to guide you through another night here on Dusk and Dreams. If this episode stirred your imagination, helped you see your dreams in a new light, or simply gave you a moment of quiet escape, I hope you'll consider following or subscribing wherever you listen. Your support helps us grow this lantern-lit community of night-minded wanderers, people who find meaning, mystery, and even comfort in the shadows. We're available on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can visit our website at breakgrid.com, follow me at Yarrow Diamond on Instagram, or join us on the company Facebook page, Neurospire or Breakgrid. If tonight's journey left you thinking about your own dreams, the ones that linger, the ones that unsettle, or the ones that feel like secret messages meant just for you, I'd love to hear them. Share your story, send me a message, or drop a comment. This show grows from your voices as much as mine. And next week, we'll follow the night into new territory. We're diving into the haunted voice, an exploration of phantom choirs, lingering echoes, and the strange ways sound becomes a vessel for both memory and myth. It's eerie, immersive, and deeply human. I can't wait to take you there. Until then, as you find yourself drifting toward sleep tonight, or simply slipping into that thin place between awake and dreaming, don't pull away. Let your mind wander. Let the symbols rise. Let the night show you whatever truth it's ready to reveal. And if you feel the pull to whisper something into the dark, don't worry. The night listens back